Last week, I spoke to game studies academics Dr. Mahli-Ann Butt and Dr. Lucy Sparrow about the harassment that women, girls, and gender diverse people face online. We specifically explored why video games as a medium became gendered, primarily seen as a male dominated activity, and how this gendering of the medium helped craft the concept of the gamer identity to be the hypermasculine, white, cishet man. Through this, Dr. Mahli-Ann explained how this narrow label of a gamer has led to a culture of gender-based harassment in the space, with Gamergate as an extreme example of this. In this week's episode, we analyze the ways in which this harassment manifests for women and gender diverse people online, and what Dr. Mahli-Ann and Dr. Lucy see as the path forward for combating this culture. From Centennial World, welcome to Let the Girls Game, a podcast mini-series where we explore the history and stories of women in gaming, powered by Let's Sing. I'm your host, Lauren Meisner, and today is part 2 of the exploration into the harassment that women, girls, and gender diverse people face in the gaming space. For anyone who didn't catch part 1 of this discussion, go back and listen before you tune in here. It gives a lot of necessary context for our conversation today. And for a refresher on my guests, Dr. Mahli-Ann Butt is a lecturer in cultural studies at the University of Melbourne. She is an ethnographer of digital cultures, researching questions of diversity in the cultures and industries of video games. And Dr. Lucy Sparrow is an associate lecturer in the School of Computing and Information Systems at the University of Melbourne. Her research is primarily interdisciplinary, lying at the intersection of human-computer interaction, game studies, social sciences, and philosophy. Without further ado, here is part 2. In terms of the harassment that women and girls experience online, do you think that, especially in the gaming space, what is the role of labels in that? And can you speak to some of the more, modern examples of the ways that women and girls are harassed online?
I think I'd probably, speaking of vignettes or little stories that we share, I often think of how when I was a kid, I would be playing a lot of online games. And it was really common in those days to be like, what's your age, sex, and location, right? People would just ask that of strangers. And I'd always be like, oh, I'm 11 and I'm female, right? And no one would believe me, like not at all, because they just simply didn't believe that an 11-year-old girl would be playing a game with them because they're made invisible, right? So like tied into what Mahli-Ann was saying before, there's this sense that the less that we adopt certain mainstream labels, and also the more that we hide who we are online, the less visible that we actually are in these gaming spaces as well, despite the fact that actually a lot of women and a lot of girls and a lot of gender diverse individuals are very, very present in gaming. What that means is that whenever people do actually reveal their gender in any way, that they can end up facing a lot of online harassment. And we know that that particular cohort actually do face the highest rates of online abuse. And in Australia, those rates are actually higher than the global average as well. And eSafety has shown as well that of those who do experience online harassment, like 1 in 4 of them are actually going to be fearing for their safety as well. So it's like a really, really serious problem, right? The thing is, a lot of us are really familiar with these online kind of tools, right? Where we can block people, we can report people, we can mute people who are harassing us. But actually, while these tools actually do form a really, really important function, they don't always work. For instance, when online harassment is sustained, people find ways around them and they create a new account, for instance, right? It's a fairly straightforward thing to do. But online harassment, particularly gender-based harassment, can be quite sustained. Furthermore, a lot of these interventions are focusing on punishing or removing people who have done these things, and less on actually supporting those people who actually are experiencing this abuse. And that's one of the things that we want to do with AI Ally is shift that focus a little bit and focus on supporting the people who are targets of harassment and empower them in more ways.
So when it comes to AI tech, I mean, there's so much conversation always about how it's going to like take our jobs. And there's obviously a lot of issues around AI for sure. I manage a team of all Gen Z women, and, they're covering it for a media corporation, covering different topics that might be controversial. And I'm always cognizant of the fact that if they don't want to have their byline on an article where they feel, worried about their safety or something like that, I want to make sure that they feel like safe saying that to me, protected by that, because, with deep fakes and all of that, you never know. So, that being said, how do you, in your research, both of you find that AI might have a positive impact on women in gaming and harassment for women online? Is there a flip side?
Yes, so there are definitely a lot of issues around AI, and it's one of those technologies that are developing so incredibly rapidly and becoming mainstream in such a rapid way as well that rightfully a lot of people are, worried about its impacts and the way it can be used and so on. And these are all things that we do need to be really mindful of. At the same time, AI has a lot of really positive potential in the moderation space with ethical oversight, obviously. So, one of the things that it's often quoted as being particularly good for is so when we're talking about harassment online, it can be so sustained and at such a high volume that honestly, like there aren't enough people in the world to do that job of moderation. And you need some kind of automation in order to take care of it. Not to mention the fact that it can be an incredibly emotionally taxing and harmful job in itself to review and moderate toxic and harmful online content. So having AI there is potentially a really positive thing in that regard. What we're really concerned with, I think, with AI Ally is that we're not just creating a tool that will just detect online harm and then punish people or remove people, right? Like that kind of thing is already being developed. There's good reason to develop that kind of technology as well. But we're really kind of trying to shift the focus and make it a bit more empowering. So it's not about taking away people's freedoms or anything like that. Rather, it's about supporting and helping people. And that's one of the reasons that throughout our entire process of developing AI Ally, it is very much about our participants. So we are recruiting right now, we're recruiting girls, young women, and gender diverse individuals age 14 to 25 to participate in our survey and to participate in workshops and in user studies, basically throughout the entire life cycle of the development of AI Ally to help inform what it will actually do. So that in the end, it's not just us making decisions of what people need, we're actually being informed by what's going on. And I think in that way, we can have a lot better ethical oversight over what's going on and make sure that it's actually good for people.
I guess I would just love to hear your perspectives on how would you recommend that women or girls find safe spaces in the gaming industry or just online communities in general? And what do you think these safe spaces look like?
Well, currently, as Amanda Cote's research shows, a lot of women and gender minorities end up having to develop intricate coping strategies. And as Lucy mentioned earlier, a lot of these coping strategies end up hiding women's contributions to gaming, such as, never using headsets, always muting your microphone, maybe using a gender neutral or more masculine avatar and name when you're playing games. And so these unfortunately hide our contributions. Sometimes they also backfire, but also having to develop these intricate coping strategies just to kind of carefully curate and maintain your online environment is exhausting and an unfair burden. So I think there is momentum here, and definitely we know how bad it is, right? We know that there is an issue, and there's more funding, more initiatives, more community groups of support that are coming together now, including research across the government, across the industry, where if we're going to go back to Sweet Baby Inc. controversies that I mentioned earlier with the Gamergate 2.0, what happened was that they're an independent contractor to do kind of script editing, they're script doctors. So they didn't lose their relationships or contracts with the companies that they were working with. Instead, the companies came to them and offered some advice, right? Of the this has happened to us too. We're here for you, and kind of actually sharing that. So it's nice to see that there is some shifts and changes. And I think AI Ally is a good example of something that we can do about this. So even if the tendency has been to cope individually or find kind of your people or whisper networks, I think it's really common to just play with your friends. We are hoping AI Ally can make it safer and kind of make it easier for us to just be online.
Yeah. And on that point as well, if you are 14 to 25, if any listener is 14 to 25 and is a girl, woman, or gender diverse individual, please do check out our website, which is ai-ally.org, where you can sign up for our survey and potentially participate in a workshop or user studies. You get $100 e-gift card if you participate in a workshop and $30 if you participate in a user study. But importantly, we just really, really want to hear your experiences and make sure that your voices are actually heard and can inform the development of AI allies, so we can make more of these kinds of safe spaces and make the online world just more of a safe space in itself for people like us. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you both so much for joining me. You're just wealths of knowledge in this space. And it was so great to hear about the project that you guys are working on. And I will absolutely put a link to AI Ally down below for any listeners that want to participate. Thank you so much to Dr. Mahli-Ann and Dr. Lucy for joining me. Thank you to Let's Sing for powering this mini-series. And thank you to you for listening to Let the Girls Game. Tune in next week where I speak with Twitch streamer Foss on the hypersexualization of women in gaming and streaming.